Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Arts Show, where we celebrate books, music, visual, and the performing arts. Welcome, everyone, here on Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Arts Show. We're going to talk about how the arts are so important because there's an amazing documentary I hope you all see, especially for those who live in the Los Angeles area and West Hollywood. It's called Studio One Forever. I encourage you to go to the website, studio1forever.com. And this is the untold story of America's iconic gay disco. I mean, you think about the days of disco, but this is like a beacon, a safety zone, a happy zone for gay folks. Starting back in 1974, the year I was born, we have award-winning director on the show with us. He is an award-winning director, Marc Saltarelli. He's award-winning director and also works in documentary filmmaking. And when you see this, you're going to understand why I keep saying he's an award-winning director. So welcome, Marc. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. It's so great to be here with you.
Oh, man. Watching this, I'm calling all my friends. I'm like, do you remember Studio One? I was here in this country for a year. I was a baby and then off in Africa. So I missed this part. But, actually, a lady that was on our podcast was in there, Irene Soderbergh. She was on there. Yeah. Our friend Steve Schneider hooked us up and he's like, no, you've got to put her on the show. And she was talking about, all she did, in regards to shows really, standing up as fundraisers for what was going on in AIDS research and also just fundraisers for everyone that was sick at the time. And you had her in there. I jumped out of my chair because I know she's passed not that long ago.
Yeah, I was so happy to find her in the crowd of people. We had such a huge line waiting to get in for the reunion show, and it was delayed by an hour. So I had plenty of time to kind of find all of the people who appeared in the documentary and some who didn't. And I think that ending sequence really shows how passionate everybody was about this place, because it represented a lot of people's youth, particularly gay men, of course. And that whole generation of gay men is essentially, a lost generation. I mean, so many of them passed from AIDS. And so it has all of that, the joy of the 70s, when it was just so exciting that all of these gay rights organizations and movements were happening. And then the 80s happened and it was tragedy. It was something that stays with people for the rest of their lives, a PTSD. And Studio One kind of not only became the haven, as you were saying, for gay men who were discriminated against. It was kind of volatile out there for gay people. There was so much homophobia from people, from homophobes and the cops, harassment everywhere you could go. But when you stepped into this place, this huge camera factory, gay men could be who they were. They were safe. It was a haven. And then the 80s happened and the place took a different turn. It became sort of a ground zero for fundraising. And one of the scenes shows that Joan Rivers hosted the first fundraiser with Sylvester and Charles Nelson Riley for APLA. And as Melissa Rivers, I was so happy when she said she would be in our film because she wanted to finally give her mother, Joan Rivers, her due. So many people remember, everything that Elizabeth Taylor did, which is wonderful. But Joan Rivers was really the first, and not many people know that. And I hope that our film can kind of set that record straight.
And she did it when it was like at a crux of her career of it could make or break you. And she's like, no, I'm going to do what's right. And I think, because we've got the history of the AIDS epidemic and everything that happened at that time. But beforehand, going into the 70s when it, here's this empty studio that was really the cameras were being built for Wizard of Oz. So, and you do have, someone in there with sparkly ruby red sneakers in there. I got the giggles when I saw that. But, I think what is so important, I've done so many shows and podcasts on, gay life. And, even to this day, we're dealing with teen suicide. We're in, September is, Suicide Awareness Month. And And then depending on where we are in the country, we travel full time. It seems to be a different outlook of safety. So there are some areas where, hey, you could have young gay men and, lesbian women and just anyone in the LGBTQ community who feel, oh, we're fine now. But they don't understand maybe sometimes what has gone in the past. And I think this is so iconic in that it shows this community and its highs and its lows emotionally, and some negative things happened, and I don't know, I'm gonna have to watch my shoes. That's what they always said to me, is if they could tell if a woman is a lesbian or not by your shoes. And then I'm watching this going, do I have open toe shoes? What's this? I don't know what it is all about, but the shoe thing is a big deal. But really getting into the history, I think it's so important, and so many things were happening with this, with you doing the movie and everyone coming together, even finding those photos from Angel Dust Rose, Angel Dust Rose. That's a good name. But we all know about Angel Dust, right? But this history for the younger generation to understand,
Absolutely.
because I think some areas in this country, young teens that are battling with their gender identity are needing to understand that there are places to go. We just have to find them out.
Yeah, and and obviously we have our main core audience are people who remember those times. But what I really hope, and it's actually been happening, is that younger people spend 90 minutes, get away from TikTok for a few minutes, and watch this film, and hopefully have a better understanding of all of the people who fought to get the rights that we have now. And unfortunately, those rights are hanging by a thin thread. That's what the Supreme Court has its sights on next, is getting rid of gay marriage, and they will. And that's why coming out at this moment, it took 4 years to get this thing made and then out finally, after a year of festivals last year. And I think it couldn't be a more perfect moment right now, right before this
crucial before the election.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we take it to the Supreme Court too? Like, I think they need to see it.
Exactly.
But really it's so interesting because it comes down to this building, Studio One and the backlot, which I think not only are we talking about a safe haven, but it was a place for, artists of all kinds to grow and become something. The open mic. Oh my gosh. I wanted to be there. Like, I didn't know I wanted to be there, but I wish I could have,
Yeah.
This was just this really iconic history on so many different levels. But, it started with this building going, hey, we may have to tear this down, right? Is that what sparked your interest?
Yeah, it all started. A friend of mine, Clifford Bell, was a friend of Lloyd Coleman, who's in the movie, and his partner, Gary Steinberg. And they were working with the developer to have one last hurrah, basically, at Studio One, a reunion, bringing back all of the people, remembering everything that happened there, opening up the dance floor again. We had Thelma Houston singing Don't Leave Me This Way. And it was really John Duran, who was a former mayor of West Hollywood, who spearheaded the effort to not let the developer level the place, to save it, to drive home the historical importance of this kind of ugly building, frankly. But even before that, there were two lesbians, Kate and Chrissy, who were very much, they started what was called the Save the Factory building, and they collected a history, about 30 pages of history. They interviewed all sorts of people that I would later interview. And I found it online, and I wasn't quite sure. Well, should I do this film? I know how much time and energy of your life you put into a film. But after reading this document and learning this history that I frankly had no idea, most of it, especially the 70s, I thought, this is a story that somehow has never been told, and really kind of needs to be told on so many levels. The importance of it for our community, preserving this history, and just reminding people, what happened. I mean, it covers nearly 20 years of LGBT history. And so that's what I wanted to do, is use this club as sort of a lens into that whole time period, and what, mostly men, but women too, of a certain age lived through. And it was really emotional just doing the interviews, because it was like going back into your youth and the excitement of the joy of having this freedom, of having this place that you could go to. And then ultimately, just like the movie, AIDS rears its ugly head and this tragedy happens, and literally people are dying everywhere. And,
not knowing even what was going on at that time, even.
Yeah. And the homophobia was just out of control at that point,
Yeah.
We were lepers, essentially, people considered.
Yeah. I lived in South Africa when it broke out, and they were saying that it was coming down from trucks in Rhodesia to South Africa. I'm like, all right. And like, what's going on here? This is some weird stuff,
Yeah.
and, but I think what one of the gentlemen in the movie said, in the film said, Studio One is iconic. This is like Los Angeles, like that's the history hub, right? There was talking about, Harvey Milk. That was just, I mean, that story is he was amazing, right? And he really showed how messed up politics was too. Like how pure can you be, right? I think it's like hard. Harvey Milk, and then you've got Stonewall in New York. Houston had, and in Texas of all places, had a radio station that was really huge for even visitors would go and find out, oh, there's this radio station and they're talking to me. And that was an interesting thing. And I think you had a gentleman in the documentary that you've spotlighted on that it was in Houston, but LA, it was like, yeah, what does LA have? And this was it. And so many people probably don't know. And then for this, I think it's really cool for folks that have lived there, and been part of it to get it. But in the preserving of history, USC, I did not know USC was keeping this as a history. But don't you think the film is? Because even all those photos, tell everybody about these photos. That was like, oh my gosh, that's like a treasure trove.
Absolutely. That's one of the best stories, throughout the whole production, really. Whenever we needed something, it seemed like it would be there. There was she was called the official photographer, Angel de Castro, and she had over 100,000 stills, beautiful stills. We had a few of those, but they were lost, essentially, missing us. But a few moments later, like a day later, I did some work at Project Angel Food. I put together their videos for different events and their telethon. And I was working with an actor who was filming a sequence. And when we were driving to the location, he said, I was telling him about the film I was working on, Studio One. And he said, oh my God, I just met this woman, Natalie Garcia, at a pool party. And she found a stash of stills that were about ready to be thrown away. And at the very same moment, my friend and co-producer, Lori Gold, texted me and told me the same thing. So it was like it was coming from every direction. Yeah. And I met her. She didn't know for sure what the slides were. And Michael Koth, who is sort of the heart of our film, he's the front bartender whose story goes through to the end. And you really see what PTSD is like and what addiction is like through his truthful, sharing of his life. And I'm so grateful for him.
It's a big heart. Listen, this has got all the feels. I'm just telling you.
And anyway, they got together and he said, yes, indeed, that's Studio One. And, all of these photos, treasure from 1980, literally the moment when everything was still good, everybody was still happy. And then very shortly after that, of course, AIDS would start unraveling and, the world changed. Amen.
So let's set it up for folks to understand the studio. And again, everyone watch the video, watch the movie, but also watch the trailer to get a glimpse of this, because the studio was like, here's the disco, but then you had the backlot where this is where this other style of entertainment was going on. And this was, I mean, if you think about what Palm Springs is now, I think it's like it had this, like, it was kind of doing like almost like it had like the vaudeville thing going on a little bit at sometimes, some different shows, like kind of burlesque, kind of jazz and everything. But then it would let people be what they wanted to do as an artist, the open mics. And then like, gosh, I mean, look at the music videos and everything that were made there and the movies that were made there.
Oh, yeah.
The Village Men. Come on now. That was
huge.
amazing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and everyone was taking acid during that movie that they were making.
Or something. Like, yeah, definitely.
And the poppers. Oh gosh. Wait,
the poppers. Oh my God.
The poppers. Explain the poppers.
Yeah, I never understood that, but people would actually use these poppers. If you don't know what that is, it's amyl nitrate, I believe and it was this liquid that, or back then they would pop something, I think, and you would inhale it and you would get a major rush off of it. And for some reason, people used it to dance with. I can't imagine it, but
that's in the day.
That smell was permeating the air, I'm sure, and it was kind of gross, but it was the way it was.
So yeah, and then side, yeah.
Well, then they at first, the early days of AIDS, when nobody knew anything, kind of like COVID, when nobody knew anything, they thought poppers could be the cause of AIDS, but of course it wasn't.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of drugs going on, but it's also interesting about the owner too. So he had all kinds of ideas, is kind of visionary, but then he also, got people getting into a little bit of protest mode with him. Yeah. So there was that side. So like, this is so multifaceted. Did you know it was going to go like crazy like this once you started getting in? Like,
well, I mean, I knew the bullet points, and I knew that we had the third act essentially coming up that we would film. So I always knew that would be kind of the cap of the film when everybody gets back together and you see that it's still so. But in terms of, there's so many stories, it was open for almost 20 years, 1,000 people it could hold every night. So everybody has a story. And as soon as word got out that we were filming, I put Facebook posts, people would send me direct messages and say, "Oh, this is my story. Can you interview me?"
Oh my gosh.
And I ended up interviewing some of them. And then, of course, the stars that attended the backlot is just amazing. And that's really probably what hooked me more than anything, because that's so unique. Jimmy Stewart, Bette Davis,
the Bette Davis,
Cary Grant was there all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Yeah.
It was the first kind of merging of a gay establishment, the gay community, with this Hollywood elite from the golden era. It was huge in the 70s. I think that really made a difference. Because when you experience people as people instead of some idea of, they're the other, if you see them that they're human, that changes you. And these actors, these filmmakers who went there would then go and make their art and have some empathy, some compassion, an understanding of gay people, and that possibly had something to do with changing the way people perceive gay people.
I think the backlot was kind of that good area for that. Like that's where a lot of like mingling happened, of course, on the disco. Yeah. Heck yeah. That was, I remember one of the performers said like, "Hey, you better get your act intact. You don't want to go overtime because the disco will drown you out." Right. There's the disco time, right?
Really bad, yeah.
You even had Barbra Streisand's sister in there.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Rosentine, she's just so wonderful. Amazing. And she appeared there quite a few times, and Barbara actually was in the audience a few times. As she said, they would watch, the audience was watching Barbara watch her. That's the way it is when Barbra Streisand is in the audience, apparently. But the greatest thing, I think, was Chita Rivera, who passed away a little over a year ago. And she's really the reason that the backlot took off to become what it was. And I was so excited when her assistant, Rosie Benting, I got in touch with her, and she said that Chita is so excited to be a part of our film and to kind of set the record straight that she's the one who made the backlot what it was. And indeed she did. She had a week of shows there, and Liza invited all of her famous friends, and the place became this huge hit all on its own, separate from the disco. Spending time with Chita and her generosity was incredible. We went to New York, And I asked her, would you be willing to, go outside the theater where Chicago was held, and do a few Fosse poses. I should backtrack here.
Oh yeah, the Fosse is in part of this too. I love it.
The reason that Cheetah had time was because they were rehearsing the musical Chicago, the original, and Bob Fosse had a heart attack, famously, and they had like 6 months of downtime. So Liza suggested that Cheetah put an act together, a one-woman show, and she did, and they took it to L.A. and made the backlot what it was. And she even changed the stage to accommodate her dancing. And so she really built that place, literally.
Well, that was so fascinating to me because I always say Fosse. I always say that because just other movies and things. But that's the thing, the history that this building has, And so it was there. You have to watch it to see what happens to the building and everything, or Google it. But go watch it. It is going to be at Landmark Sunset in West Hollywood, September 13th through 19th, and then in NoHo, right in North Hollywood. It's going to be there October 3rd. And then available on all VOD platforms. So check that out, October 8th. But if you're in LA, go to the actual performances while you can. Marc, I hope you do more with this story than what has happened. I know that is epic what you've already created, but I think you have 10,000 stories in there to tell.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right? I'm developing a narrative feature based on the film, basically. And of course, we can always do, a series, a documentary series.
I hope you do.
The Blu-ray that we created has a lot of bonus features. I couldn't fit so many great things into the 90-minute film, and some of them are in there. We have the whole Cheetah Rivera interview in there, and a commentary with Bruce Valanche, who's been such a great supporter of our film. So if you go to www.studio1forever.com, you can learn more about the film, and you can have the links. They're actually available for pre-order on Apple TV now. So we hope everybody can come and see it.
Thank you so much, Marc.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Lisa.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show. Please keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Big Blend magazines at blendradioandtv.com.